Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders, CEOs, and investors to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is a very special one. This is the first episode of 2024, and his name is Johnny Tan, the founder and CEO of Appficiency. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have an amazing track record and a great story. Your company is now turning 10 this year, which is an amazing milestone. For curiosity, everyone knows me, knows that I'm completely crazy about stats, especially about companies and scaling. Only 80% of new businesses do survive for the first year. Only 50% get to 5 years, and just 1/3 get to 10 years, right? So you will share more about where you are in terms of the stage of growth, Johnny, later. But you are clearly over 10 billion in revenue, which are kind of 0.4% of all companies who get there. So the combination of 1/3 who gets to 10 years and 0.4% who gets to 10 billion in revenue, this is really incredible, and it's a tribute for the founders and CEOs that come to this show, because it seems easy. We all see the news, but it's another story when we are starting and scaling up our businesses. So Johnny, tell us a bit more about yourself, how it all started. I know that you have been through McKinsey, Salesforce, Netsuite, then in Bradstreet before starting your own company. But let us know more about your story and why did you decide to start Appficiency?
Yeah, sure thing. I think like many founders and many entrepreneurs' story, my story begins when I was young and forming personality. And that's correct for me as well. When I came to Canada when I was 3 years old, I had my birthday. We traveled. My dad always fondly told me that we traveled the longer way around the world from Myanmar to Toronto. And because we followed the date line, I had my birthday in Rangoon. I had my birthday in Zurich. I had my birthday in Paris, Montreal, and Toronto.
Wow.
So my third birthday I covered almost half the world. And
amazing story.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. I grew up knowing English before I knew my mother tongue, or at least the language of Burmese, where I was born, because my father knew that we would be moving here. And I grew up, I think, around both my mother and my brothers. My mother was a very strong woman. She was the breadwinner of the house ultimately over time, and she I think very much had the ambition to do her own thing, but didn't know how. And she comes from a family that did a lot of mercantile type work and business. And my dad was an aircraft safety inspector. He had been shaped in his life by his brothers passing early through airplane accidents. They were all in Air Force of some kind, and because of that, he was very, very conservative and cautious. But the things I got from them, I think, shaped me and my story. My dad was highly disciplined. He could do the same habit his whole life, every day, and he really did. He's a morning bird, as I say. He always got up early. And my mom was ambitious and also, in a mom way, of course, believed that we had a responsibility to the world to do something better. And so I think those things shaped me. As I worked and did schooling, although I was in a gifted program, I really wasn't a very good student. I always wanted to change the rules to optimize them, to improve them, to innovate them. And ultimately what happened was I bounced around and did a bunch of careers before I kind of finally settled on something that resonated with me, and that was sales engineering and selling. And I think that what resonated there with me was really the understanding what the customer, like, I got to hear what the customer really wanted to do. And then from there on, I just felt the responsibility that became an itch that I couldn't help but scratch. So after working at in sales for a little while. I said I really want to go start my own thing, and I took a half measure. I went to a company that promised a residual type commission plan, so you could build up a book of business over time. And on the second week that I was there, they rescinded that plan, went to a normal annual plan, and I knew my days were numbered there, even though I just left a great job. I had always been
And
in tech and done well.
mhm.
Yeah, and so a few months later, I left. I started my business, which before Appficiency was called More Than Insights, and we shot off. It was at the time Salesforce was in its heyday. I was just coming off of being one of the widely recognized in my community, at least,
Mhm.
for knowledge in that tech on that tech platform. And
Yeah.
we closed nearly $1 million of business in 3 months with nobody, just me. And so
Wow,
we needed
it's
to
impressive.
scale. Um, and I think I to be very honest, I think I got some cold feet. I didn't really know what to do with that level of you know revenue coming in, and not
Right.
sure what systems I had to make it happen. But my daughter was born at the time. The job was heavily in the U.S., and so I
Mhm.
decided to um, stay with family, not miss my kids' younger years. And I ended up at Oracle NetSuite. I did that for 6.5 years, and when I joined NetSuite, I said very clearly, I said to my boss, I said, the day that we stop playing basketball twice a week in the mornings is the beginning of the end for me. I'll last maybe a year, and that's it. And sure enough, the company got successful. Oracle got very successful. People started flying around. There wasn't that daily addiction to basketball, and just some sense of, I think, friendships and community. And so I said it's time for me to go, and I wanted to create that community that never forgot the customer's voice. And so that's really why we started Appficiency.
I really enjoy the way you shared your story because behind a great business there is always a great team and of course a great founder. And I think that's what is behind the business is much more important. So life always comes first, right? So and we are not defined by the size or the success of our business. And it doesn't matter if our business is successful, if we are not successful in our personal life, if we don't enjoy what we do, if we don't have fun, if we don't feel fulfillment. So it's really nice that you shared a bit more about yourself and so also nice to see that with Salesforce, you have been almost there at the beginning, and you have also been at important moments in at Oracle with NetSuite, right? So which is also quite interesting to know. So I'm sure that everyone now is curious. So and why Appficiency? What is Appficiency about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that uh, Appficiency was about um, doing something that was long necessary. Not necessary for me, although that is part of, for sure, the drive. I think all entrepreneurs have some, dark desire to
Mhm.
have to prove it to themselves. It's actually,
Right.
I don't think a lot of us try to prove it to the world. I think most of us try to prove it to ourselves. But efficiency was one of those, you know, when you sell to customers a lot, when you interact with customers a lot, at some point you have to decide, is that promise that you made them yours or the company's? And then if it's the company's, then you package it up as best you can and you leave it with somebody else's team.
Mhm.
But some of us, I think, go the other way and say that promise is ours. It's nobody else's but ours. And so the idea behind efficiency was actually to create the first scaled services business. Now, there are many scaled services business. Let's be super clear, right? This is a massive industry. This is a third of all GDP, maybe, but the services industries are highly tailored to a function, and there's not a lot that are tailored to how do you use software to help you grow your business. If you think about it today, there's many digital transformation firms. I worked for a little while at McKinsey, and I saw how they did some of their consulting, very advanced, but they lived at the strategy level. So when we started Appficiency, I really wanted to do two things. One is I wanted to be absolutely create a particular set of consultants that were business first, technology second, but did technology consulting.
Right.
And so that was really important to me. So the first problem I was solving was that technology consultants were not business savvy enough. That was my first
Hmm.
problem I was trying to
Hmm.
solve. And then I think the second big problem that I was trying to solve was that nobody really, for lack of a better term, gave a crap about the customer's many ecosystems that they have. And in
Hmm.
tech, all what we're seeing now is just there's more and more ecosystem involved. There's an app for
Right.
everything. It's not abnormal for a company to be managing a dozen systems, and that's a dozen systems still having primary functions correctly lined up. Never mind, some people have acquisitions and so on and so forth, and so all of a sudden they have 30, 40 systems, and to get them all to talk to each other, all these different vendors, all that model, we wanted to improve that, and so we wanted to be a bit more of a customer advocate, and we really wanted to solve the entire problem. Over the years, I think that changed into, and what we can talk about that more, but it changed into this whole industry concept, this whole
Right.
solving the true taxonomical problem at the company. But it started as there's got to be a better way for technology consultants to be business savvy, and so we just flipped it on its head, and we said
Hmm.
let's be business savvy first, technology consultant second, and then the second way was really let's take
Hmm.
care of all the pieces, whether they're ours or not.
Right.
And by doing that, I think you will um, you will sometimes get involved in a fight that you shouldn't be in, and you'll get clocked in the head. But at other times, you'll provide the customer that safety and brotherhood and um, support that they just can't get anywhere else, and because of that, um, they will be your partner and ally for a long time.
Yeah. It's really nice the way you describe the way you address the two big problems that you created the company to solve. And I know that you have a great brand signature, which is we are market makers, who completely aligns with what you just said. I'd like to share a bit more with the audience. What are we talking about when you on your website we have this we are market makers?
Yeah, great question. Maybe because I'm also an immigrant, I don't know, but I do love to blend ideas from different domains together. I find that uh, I find that it feels like they make a lot more sense for everybody.
Mhm.
And if you think about market maker, the traditional concept of market maker is actually in the financial world, right? The TSX, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, these are market makers.
Right.
They created a market so others can trade and exchange. And in many ways, if you think about it, they are so successful by being relatively last to succeed in that trade, if you will. And
Mhm.
so that humility was always something that I wanted in our company too. And so when we evolved from our first two big problems that we were solving as a company, right? You start the company, you're like, I can solve these problems, and
Right.
there's a business to be had, there's a lifestyle to a lifestyle like there's work that I love doing that I think others will love doing in it. That's the entrepreneurial mindset in the beginning. Then as you scale, you realize that people need to have that problem redefined, and you need that problem redefined so that it can be large enough that should you scale to 100 million, when you get past your first million, you're kind of like, oh wow, this could work. Then you get past 3 million, 4 million, 7 million, you're like, oh, uh, like I dreamt way too small in the beginning, and now I got to dream 10 times as big. Maybe 10 times as big is not big enough. Let's make it
Mhm.
1,000 just arbitrarily. What does that feel like? Okay, now we need a vision that really works for that. And I don't know that the vision, in its essence, changes. The feelings, the integrity of what we're trying to do doesn't change, but the way you say it and the way you put the uh, future in place, it changes. And so we went to this, we are market makers. And the concept was What is really surprising, actually, you know, if you think about technology, we're maybe 50 years old, roughly, right? Does anybody really
Mhm.
remember any logical computer before 1970, right? So they're 50, 55 years old, roughly.
It's incredible.
Um, and yeah,
Seems so much more.
and it was incredible before what we did without them. But the reality is we all don't know how to do it yet. And so the market maker is making the market for how companies interact with software. And I will tell
Mhm.
you today, everybody talks about it. There's a million podcasts about it. I really don't think we figured this thing out yet,
Mhm.
as a civilization. How do you
Right.
interact with software really, really well? Do you talk to it? Should it read your mind? Should it
Mhm.
automate what you do, or should it innovate what you do? No, that we're not sure what to use it for. We use it for a lot of
Mhm.
things,
Right.
but I don't know that we know how to use it for sure yet. And part of that, or at least when I started to uncover that problem, that was the
Mhm.
work that we do every day as a consultant. At least it's
Yeah.
the small part of that work. But the next part of that work that shows up underneath that is, but how does the business even run without software? And so all of a sudden, that market maker concept is actually about creating the right mix, match, and place and framework for all businesses of the and when you do all businesses, it's too big, so you got to narrow it down to a market type. Then you make that market. And so we make software. We look for white spaces, and we make models in that that work for people, whether
Mhm.
that's a technology and a industry match, or whether that's maybe a functional and a sort of a change in a change in technology match that
Right.
also matches with a business change. But
Yeah.
that's what market makers are about.
Yeah. And are you comfortable disclosing, Johnny, where are you in terms of interval of revenue, head count? So some figures, number of customers, some figures to get to know a bit more. Where are you in terms of growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're staring down the barrel right now at the $30 million threshold.
Well
We're
done.
staring at the 200 person threshold, and I would tell you that we're looking at about 8 countries maybe. We've gone global.
Super impressive.
It's been quite a wild ride, and I think we're spread out about 5 major business units right now.
Yeah. And we will discuss it a bit later in the show. So how did you go from one core business to multiple BUs and multiple companies? Um, and you were talking about the journey, right? So we need to start very well focused. We need to have a big enough problem to solve, but then we can try to solve the big problem from the start. So we need to start with a smaller problem, with that big problem, with a narrative that you just shared. So how has been the evolution during these 10 years to go from 0 to 30 million in revenue? So what were, if you would need to define the different stages and where you found that you were a bit stuck in certain stages, maybe at 1 million or at 5 or 10. So what has been the breakthroughs that you needed to bring to the table to go through the ceiling and get to the next stage of growth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are definitely plateaus, and there's definitely not enough literature about those plateaus, I will tell you. The first plateau I would say is the 3 million mark. And what happens at around the 3 million mark, especially in a services company, at that point you're probably between 15 to 25 people. And if you don't start putting in some long-term processes that can survive being scaled to 100 people, to 200 people, to basically being scaled to the point where you don't know who read that first document, and
Mhm.
they come in and leave your company and you don't know who they were. Can you scale? Can your documents survive that? Can your process and artifacts and mid-level managers, senior managers survive that? That's
Right.
the first things you're putting in at 3 million. And if you get it wrong, you might find a way to get past 3, but you'll come back down to 3, fix it, and then you have to go up again. And so it's, it's that staggered graph up. It's not a smooth one. So 3 million is definitely a plateau for us. I would say that the 8-9 million mark was another plateau, but you can call it 10, which is why I think the stat is there. But I would tell you that 10 is on the other side of it. So 10 is 10 is like you solved it. And that's where you really have to invest in the back office. And so you can't get past 8 or 9 without having a real HR person who's savvy enough, without having a real leadership program where people want to join you at a small company size and help you grow it, and you are willing to give them autonomy and structured systems that they can use to grow. And so a lot of people don't like that point because your profitability dips heavily in that range. And then you get past 10. Now it's a different profitability, and I would say that it's a different growth curve. But I do believe that the next big transformation is the 25 mark. So when you're at the $25 million mark, then you're gonna definitely see what happens after that. You can't just have broad process. You need very specific process. And one of the best books I've ever read, it's called How Big Things Get Done. And it talks about these massive construction projects and all the successful ones that make it on time or on budget, which is really saying, did they achieve what they were trying to achieve? It's because they were able to break it down into segmented, small, habitual pieces that people could get very good at very quickly. And therefore, most of the business relies on this layer of habit that's extremely robust, like extremely resilient in all kinds of situations, and think of that like your stem cell, if you will. You use that to create any reaction you need to the market, any reaction you need to a competitor, any reaction you need to a change in the fundamentals of why, of the ingredients you have to work with in the market. It's that habit layer. Everything else is one off, because that's your 25 becoming 50. But to get to 25, you have to have a resilient layer. Otherwise, you'll go up and you'll fall, and you go up and you'll fall, because you have different team members trying to do it a different way.
Love it. So, and something that I was reflecting what you were talking about, especially the evolution of yourself also as CEO of a company of 3 million, of 8-9 million, 25 million, 50 million. I'm sure that's in the beginning, it's all about proving product market fit, that the problem that you are trying to solve is really valuable, and that you are able to bring a solution to solve that problem, being able to start delegating tasks, but still a lot in the weeds, and doing a lot yourself, almost taking care of a bit of everything of the business, then being able to start delegating some tasks. And you will not get over 1 or 3 million if you are not able to start delegating functions, and to start delegating functions in a certain order, which is another art to understand for each business, what functions to delegate, where to invest first, because a missed step can make you get back, derail, or put the company in a very risky situation if you hire the wrong VP at that stage of the company. Also later, but the impact is not so big, I believe. We can always get back to the foundation, maybe suffer a bit, but then we can get back to the next stage. Then you're talking about the other, and typically I like to say this is the stage from going from the founding team to the leadership team 1.0. And then we need to go from leadership team 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and so on.
Absolutely.
Something that I've also seen in your journey, Jordi, and you have also described it earlier, is that there is this discussion about when should we start opening new business units, new products. So I would have 2 questions for you. So the first one, the new business units go through the same cycles that you just described in your first, let's say, BU. And the second question is, when it's the right timing to start opening without losing focus, right? So I will jump first the leadership team, building the leadership team. That's one of the topics that I'm the most passionate about, and maybe connect this one with the way you build Appficiency, because I think it's very related. Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree they're very related. It's a great question. The first, so, you know, for sure, if you're going to build a leadership team, you have to work on yourself. You have to know yourself, and absolutely that the most important thing is to, if you can't understand yourself, you can't pick a good leader, you can't develop a good leader, and you can't grow a good leader. And by the way, leaders need all three of those things. I think it's such a myth that we find this perfect human being in hiring process. It to me it's one of the big lies that I was told along the way.
Yeah,
And I hear it from a lot of people like this. There's this amazing person. You just got to go find them and convince them to
yeah,
take the job. And no, I mean that's 1/3 of that of the formula. The second one is you
yeah.
got to onboard them correctly and give them structures that work. And then the third one is you got to keep growing them somehow too. But to do that, I think you got to do that to yourself first as well. And if you don't know your skills, if you don't know how to transform yourself and shed the things that helped you get to here so that you can go to the next level, you don't know what you need in the leadership team too. And so what I found was as we hired leaders, whether we promoted from within, whether we hired from external, whether we um, did some combination, put them with that person, put them with this person, where we failed the most was when we actually got the structure of the business wrong and matched it with the wrong person. So
Mhm.
what's interesting, I think, is that first of all, there's way more potential for leadership in people than we might know, but it gets clouded by the fact that the structure itself is not correct. And yes,
That's
absolutely, you
it.
want to find that person that knows what structure to make. That's a tough journey. I'm on it right now, and I'm still, I'm still a student of the game. There's lots to learn, and it's you don't know it till you've been there.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the first learning was you got to find great people. Absolutely, um, you have to let internal people that are great shine and nurture them up. But if your structure is not right, they themselves may not know how to fix that fully themselves, and you have to help them do that, get ready for that. And so the structure has to be sorted for them, which is why we actually diversify the business too into different business units. Um,
Mhm.
and then, like I said, the third one is that they need a playground. They need a place where they can play, practice, and grow. And you have to help them with that and give them enough feedback, whether it's actual material, hard feedback, physical from the business and its performance, or whether it's feedback from you directly and others. They got to have that so that they can calibrate and course correct and improve how they take you from where you were to the next stage.
Yeah. In terms of the structure, I think when we get to these different business units, different product lines, when we have the shared services concept starting and the matrix organization coming up, I think that's the main pain of this stage of growth. I believe it's the 25 million to the 50 million is really being able to be fluent in a matrix organization without losing focus and ensuring that everyone is really it's really focused there. Do you agree with that sometimes the structure that allowed you to get here, it's not the same that will allow you to get to the next stage. So there is a transformation in terms of structure from stage to stage. And there is another component that you're talking about, which is understanding if you have the right people on the right seats. And then this magical transformation, I believe, that we all go through, especially coming from a Silicon Valley school, that we need to, as you said, to hire those A players. And we all believe that we need to have the best players in the world for the seats, and we are done. And then we figure out that sometimes it's a combination of both. It's having people who have been there, done that before, and people who are angry leaders who are doing it for the first time and figuring out that are more innovative. Sometimes they are also not negative about the past experiences because they are trying something for the first time. So they just try it, and maybe we tried something that didn't work, but it was in the wrong context. Now it might work. So they don't have the fear because they've tried it 3 or 4 times and it didn't work. So they will not try it again. So I think that combination of people who are fresh and people who have been there, and that's the magic, that's the art and science of building a team, of nurturing a team, of expanding a team. And that's what we always, I would say, every single CEO, every single founder would take much more care of culture much early on, right? So this is really yeah, and sorry to be asking the question and also providing my opinion. But yeah, I was just sharing with you the kind of how you see the evolution of the structure, and sometimes it's difficult to understand if it's too early. And those are really the tough gaps. And sorry again for the reflection, Johnny.
No, I think
If you do it too late, the change of the structure, again, it's too late. If you do it too early, it will affect profitability. It will be too slow. People will panic. People will say that it was much better as it was in the past. So you will get worse before you get better. And that's what scares leaders to hell is the CEO is crazy. The leadership team is crazy. These guys don't know what they are trying to do. They are killing the company. So how to go through this fear, this change, and especially that kind of feeling of it was so much better before. We had so much fun. We had time to play basketball. How to keep that culture alive as we go through the ups and downs of scaling a business.
there's a lot of questions in there.
Sorry, it was more a
No problem.
reflection.
I think
More a conversation than a question, right?
it's a really important question though. So the first thing I would say is let's go back to basics, right? Let's go Occam's razor here. The most obvious answer is usually the right answer, and you know, if you look at it that way, people are trying to just do what you want them to do, and so I think the broadest stroke I can make against everything you just said is confusion. They can't be confused. You cannot be confused, and it's so easy to be confused. Yeah. It's so easy to be confused. Like it's easy to be confused with just your spouse and your life partner day to day. Can you imagine? You multiply that by 200 or 50,000 or 100,000 in some of these organizations. So you have to be super not confusing. And and so but you're right, the business still needs what it needs. And so for example, you know, I do equate our revenue size with the young adult size in the human growth period, where you're not a teenager, but you don't really know what your first job is yet, and or you maybe you have your first job, but you're not sure if you like it yet, and so you're still trying to put you know you have skills, you know you made it past survival and all that kind of good stuff. You know you have some friends you like, you know you have some friends you don't like, but you're not sure if you really don't like them, and you or you or you know, there's something wrong with you and maybe you'll like them later, and you're still kind of looking for that life partner maybe. There's all these semi-mature pieces in place of the business, and that's true for our size. It's not super easy to scale because it's confusing. And it's confusing because the customers, they want, you know, they're like, oh well, you're big enough that we want you to do all of the stuff that we expect IBM to do, or we want you to do all the stuff that Deloitte does, and that's just not. I mean, it's just not fair on our size of business, and of course Deloitte charges a different dollar for that, and so because the customer has a wide set of requirements for you, and the business is trying to play to as many as it can, people get confused. And so what we want to do is reduce that confusion. I think when we split up the business, when we have leaders engage in a culture, the culture needs to be based on such fundamentals that there can be no confusion. And that's why I think often people kind of look at businesses and they're like, okay, so you got this great cultural statement, mission statement, and they can't make the leap from that to execution. But you have to execute really, really well. Like executing is what makes you money, but culture and vision is what keeps you together so that you can make the second dollar.
Yeah.
Right? The first dollar anybody can make, because everyone will just kind of suffer through that first dollar if they need to. But nobody's sticking around to make the second dollar, man, if you don't got your values and integrity and culture correct. And
Yeah.
so that's why those fundamentals need to be so simple, because they can't be confusing.
Yeah.
And then I think when you start doing that, then you start to have a better idea of when you should break apart a company, when you shouldn't. For us, I said, I always want people to, if I feel that the job is too confusing for myself, then that needs to be split into a business unit, or needs to split into separate sub functions or separate departments even. For us, ironically, we didn't establish a lot of marketing prior to now. And so for us, that's our next big reduction of confusion. Sales was fully confused. Should they sell? Should they develop? Should they generate leads? Should they close the business? Do they nurture the relationship they have, which is making them lots of money, or do they worry about $2, right? They got $1 down pat, but do they worry about $2? Because as soon as $1's done, $2 looks like a mile away. And so, I think that's the primary yardstick to use at this point. Reduce confusion.
Love it. I think that you just touched two critical ingredients for me, which is kind of the clarity of vision, of having a clear narrative about the future for the long, mid, and short term, killing complexity. So being super, super clear, the importance of repetition. And now you brought marketing is really the importance of specializing more and more and more as you move forward, right? So then you need to start opening the functions. So now it's not anymore marketing and sales, it's sales and marketing. Now it's not anymore marketing, is content marketing, is branding, is demand gen, is outreach, is social media, is video, is design. So then you start opening and opening and opening as you move to the next stage. And then that's when we also need to be humble as VPs and as CEOs to understand, to go through that navigation, to understand that maybe the person who got us here might need to go hire her or his boss for the next stage of growth. Or awesome, even better, if they are able to grow themselves faster than the business to the next stage, because that's the same challenge of the founder is really to be able to keep growing quicker than the company. And we know that this is very rare. So being able to be at the helm of the company for 10 years through all these stages of growth and adapting yourself, because you need, as you said, to become a different CEO. If not, you'll be the main bottleneck of growth of the company, right?
Yeah, I would tell you that I am a different animal from even 2 years ago. And 2 years ago I was a different animal from 2 years prior to that. And I just need to continue to be highly adaptable. And because the more I'm adaptable, the more my team will also be able to adapt, and they can learn from that adaptation to take the helm and be the new adaptation leader themselves.
But it also goes at a certain point, maybe to a concept of potential group CEO, or even being much more a chairman than a CEO, which again requires different characteristics. So you need to be able to, how do I lead a CEO? It's not, if I'm not able to lead myself, how can I encourage? How can I motivate? How can I train? How can I provide feedback? How can I provide support to a CEO that is going through all my tribulations? The good news about the board member who has been the CEO is that he knows what is inside the mind of the CEO. So he's able to support more. Of course, I believe in diversity. You can also have amazing board members that didn't have the experience and bring another kind of angles. But I think it helps to have someone who has been there, where you can vent with, and who can really understand what you are going through. So with that, the time is flying. That's incredible when we are having fun and a good time. How do you see the future of Appficiency, and how do you see your journey from the 30 to the 100 million? What are the big challenges ahead, the big news that the market should know about the future of Appficiency?
Well, I think that That's the fun part to me.
Sorry to talk about the past for the last 40 minutes.
Not at all, not at all. Totally fair. For sure, what's next for us is also partly what we want to continue to shift in the marketplace. It's still living that original dream, which is to become a market maker, um, to be that business first and unlock the keys type person for our customers. That's still going to be part of what makes us scale, and if not a heavy part of what makes us scale. However, what we need to do around that is now we need to put in additional capabilities, and those capabilities each will become this one solid habit. That could be a company, a separate company, that could be just another department, or it could just be another line of business, a line of service within what we are about to do. And so yes, there's all the normal ways to grow. And so, I have an MBA, and all the MBAs that might be listening to podcasts here. Yes, there's regionality, there's line of business, there's revision to product lines. Absolutely, there's all of that. But behind all of that is actually your your ability to package what you have, set it up for execution, and then add to that piece and add to that piece. And those, if you ask me, behave like small startups along the way. And so for us, our journey, and we may not be making the same journey as everybody else. I know some people have a much more hyper growth market that they might sit in, especially in tech. And going from 0 to 100 is, if you condense that into 3 years, well, you're just doing the same thing really, really well, which is fine. And that's a different growth path. But for us, we're doing it. We're definitely trying to, build it to last, and doing it from the outside in, not being the largest sort of first person or the largest piece in the puzzle that we actually play for. And so now we add a new habit, teach the community, teach the world, and grow through that. The next biggest thing for us is what I call 2.0. 2.0 in the way we do professional services, 2.0 in the way that we sell. I really think it's 2.0 in the way that businesses look at software. There's just a lot of myth about software right now. And for those of us that remember when software started, I remember typing in 10, go to 20, 20, run 30, and doing that initial DOS prompt commands. I think the future is really having business types be pre-understood, redeveloped into narrow fields, but put on a base, like I call that stem cell base, where the platform is so flexible it can do anything. This was tried maybe 20 years ago, but it was too early for the market. Now the market has these big mature applications. Everyone's on, you're picking ecosystems. You're not picking you're not picking an application anymore. Right? You're picking Oracle or SAP. It feels like it doesn't feel like you're picking this NetSuite application and so on and so forth. And so, but the reality is, because they got so big, your business got lost in that. And the future for us and the future for the market, I would tell you, is that the market's going to come back to industrialization, come back to specialization in industry. And they're going to come back and say, hold on, now Oracle, SAP, whoever you are, you used to be this pricey, you're now this pricey, and there's lots of you. Now what about me as a company now? This is how I do it. If you don't understand me, get out of my way, because I can do this with any one of you applications out here. And that's the nature of software, always creating and commoditizing the last year's software with new one. So when they get understood, when that industry comes along, that's our capitalization that's our market to capitalize on, which is being that company that understands what they needed to do in the beginning, that suits the tailored suit that suits them, and have that pre-done in an efficient and high value driven way. So great pricing, great delivery, great outcomes for them.
And we come to the beginning of the show. So business first, technology second, right? So it really connects with the two problems that you started the company with, and of course being able to be fluent in the different technologies so you can serve that industry and that customer. So yeah, that's really amazing, and it's really inspiring because you have within your business units you have a combination of services and products, and you are also expanding organically and through M&A. We could have an entire show about those different avenues of growth. And something that I really loved about what you said, and even inside the larger NetSuite, the larger, sorry, business unit, I always like to see even inside one business unit, there are startups and scale-ups. There are bets that we are doing, and this is one of the main jobs of the CEO of the leadership team, is to be able to provide that clarity about the future and do a calculated risk about what are the bets and make sure that they keep doing bets, not too much because it can put the company at risk, and not any and just exploiting, also keep exploring as you move forward. So let's go to the last segment of the show, Johnny, where we ask quick questions and you provide, please, a brief answer. So let's start with the self-reflective ones. So if you would have the opportunity to have a coffee with yourself in 2014, 10 years ago, what advice would you offer to your younger Johnny at the time?
I would tell my younger self, the thing that you like to do, the thing that lights you up, that you can look in a mirror and see yourself happy doing, make sure you don't let anyone else do that.
Amazing. What are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
For sure, that's going to be that we have developed people that now are going to go out and do amazing things themselves. We had to know that we were part of their journey, an important part of their journey. I think that's a great. That's the teacher's highest reward.
All the best skill ups are factories of leaders. So, and that's really a huge fulfillment. Worst advice ever received?
That's a tough one because honestly, it's up to you to make the advice good.
Yeah.
My mom always used to say, and I love
you
this
are
saying.
You will not mention me.
Yeah, not at all. Of course not. You've been a massive transformation for us. I think I like what my mom's advice said was, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. So advice needs to be curated by the listener, not it doesn't need to be the right advice. And so, because all advice is correct in its own way. So I really thought about that question. I don't have an answer for you. There's not been bad advice. There's been, I wasn't ready as a student to hear that advice.
Yeah. That's a great mindset, assuming the responsibility always, not leaving the responsibility on the other side, right? So we are always in command, not letting others be in command. I think that's a trait of a great leader. So, and finally, the resources. Your favorite book, it can be business or non-business, you decide.
That's an excellent question. I would tell you that my favorite books, my favorite resources, I have many, many, many things I read, people I talk to, amazing resources out there. But the number one thing that I love the most is going to be the small, tear-jerking, emotionally catch your stomach in your mouth type feelings that you get from small quotes, poetry. I don't think the world needs to be. I don't think there's one big book that I would point to. There's many good books. I have a whole library that I keep here all the time. But it's the moment. When you find a moment that moved you, savor that, look at it. There was something in there for you.
Favorite movie or series?
Favorite movie or series? It's going to be Riddick, The Chronicles of Riddick. He's just a complete badass, and he's someone who's against the grain, but of incredible integrity.
Love it. And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one.
That's a great question. I really like Brunson's podcast. It was really good, and I listened to it recently, so it's a bit top of mind now. That's fair, but
Mhm.
podcasts about relationships, about the soft stuff, is all the hard stuff. And in business, the to make a distinction is ridiculous. Commercialization happens because of the soft things, and so we have to get good at the soft things.
It's
And
really
so, yeah,
amazing.
I really like Brunson's podcast on the 70-30 perfect. He talks a bunch of a bunch of topics in that podcast, but he talks very much about how do we find the best mate in that. And what's funny is
Uh-huh.
that is business. If you think about it, every day you're finding the best working partner for that task, for that
Absolutely.
week, for that initiative, for that department, for that business unit.
Good one to check. I didn't know about it, so definitely we'll check it out. Thanks for sharing your recommendations, Johnny. And for the ones who'd like to reach out to you, ask for advice, connect with Appficiency, get to know more how you can help them scale up with business first and technology second, where they should how they should reach out to you.
Honestly, the best way is on LinkedIn, and I find that a lot of people they I'm looking for that LinkedIn message. If you really want to have me accept the connection and listen to your first or second text, email, whatever, it's someone who's thought deeply about what they want and are clear on what they're asking for. All of us are looking for things. There's nothing wrong with that. And the person who's shed their self-consciousness about asking for it correctly, I love that person. I want to know that person. They have gone through some gauntlet, and I'd love to hear their story.
Johnny, thanks so much for making the time to share your journey with us and also sharing your view of the future, and all the best for Appficiency
Thank you so much,
and
Mike.
for you, of course.
And you've been great help for Appficiency. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our community, thanks for being there. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life easier as you scale up your business. See you soon and keep scaling.